What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Midterm Rental Show. I'm your host, Bailey Kramer, and in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the third midterm rental that I bought. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so if you're just tuning in, this is a continuation of a series I'm doing on all of the midterm rentals that I've bought to date. So I talked about the first two properties I bought. The first one was in 2022. The second was in 2023. And this is the third property that I'll be talking about, which was also bought in 2023. So if you haven't listened to the previous episode, I recommend you do. I'll leave a link to it down below if you're watching here on YouTube, because it got very, very interesting. Just to recap, my second property, I tried to do the BRRRR strategy on. It completely failed, completely backfired. A lot of things went wrong. And again, you can listen to that full episode to hear the specifics. But I ended up officially refinancing that property on November 1st of 2023. And I thought I was gonna have to bring $0 to the table, but ended up being $24,000 out of pocket to pay back my lender. Again, a lot more details in the previous episode. This episode is about the triplex that I bought, which I officially closed on just 2 weeks after the refinance of the previous property. And looking at the settlement statement here, I had to come out of pocket an additional $32,000 just 2 weeks later. So that's just a quick teaser of this episode. I'm going to go in way more detail on all the details. So buckle in. Okay, so this story starts because I was constantly, and still am, constantly looking at Redfin and Zillow for more real estate deals. I'm in buying mode. I've been in buying mode for the past couple of years. And that's what I love doing with real estate, is just taking the money I make and putting it into more real estate. So I saw a property come up on the market and it was listed for $150,000. And it was a triplex, which was really cool to me because I never owned a property that had multiple units. I only bought 2 single family houses up to this point by myself. So I saw this triplex, and again, $150,000 seemed like a really good deal. The biggest problem though was that there were no pictures listed on Redfin or Zillow. So I talked to my agent. I'm like, hey, can you figure out what's going on? They tell me, my agent, her name's Brittany. Brittany tells me, here's the deal. They will let you tour the units, but only after you have an accepted offer. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to make an offer if I don't see the units? And she's like, honestly, what I would do is just make an offer based on your best guess, essentially. And once it's accepted, or if it's accepted, you'll then be able to tour the units. And if they're not in the shape that you want them to be in, you can always back out or renegotiate. And I'm like, all right, I guess I don't really have any choice if I want the property. So sure. So I threw out an offer of, I think I did $147,000 just to, I don't know, get a little bit less. And they accepted. So my realtor toured the units and they were in way better shape than I expected. I barely had to do anything to the property other than adding washer and dryer units to each unit, which that was a little bit of a process, but the shape of the units were really good. Like nice floors, paint, the kitchens were fine. It was solid. There were a couple of things that came back on the inspection that had to do with like water intrusion and certain things like that my lender cared about. And well, I cared about it too, but my lender wouldn't close on the loan until the seller fixed those things. So there were a couple of things that the seller ended up fixing before closing. And I got back a $4,000 seller credit at closing, which just helped with the closing cost. So I ended up closing this property and I had to bring $32,000 out of my pocket. Now at this point, I just closed on a property and had to bring $24,000 out of pocket. I have 23 at this point, and this is literally like all the money I have. I didn't look at my bank records, but I can tell you for almost a fact that after this down payment of $32,000, I had like as little to $0 as my lender would allow me to have. It was very, I don't know if scary is the word, but I mean, it was a risk to say the least. But I knew I had confidence in my ability to run these as midterm rentals. So I felt pretty confident and I was honestly good with it. So I ended up buying the property and all 3 units were occupied. So each unit was rented for, I want to say $650 each. There was 2 units that were 1 bed, 1 bath, and then 1 unit that was 2 bed, 1 bath. So that one might've been a little bit more, but I think the total amount that they were collecting in rent was roughly like $1,900. So that was that. Now, all the tenants, or two of the tenants were on month-to-month leases. One of them had a fixed lease. So I went to the first tenant that was month-to-month, and I said, hey, I'm giving you a 30-day notice to move out because I was going to go in there and do my midterm rental thing. Which, by the way, that's not something that I think landlords or even myself talk about much, is like the fact that I did technically have this person leave so that I could use this rental to make money. I don't know. I do see some, that's a whole probably another podcast of like the moral and like how I felt about it personally. But at the end of the day, I did it and I've done it multiple times. So we'll talk about that on another podcast. Anyways, this person gave them the 30-day notice. They left. I then got, again, I had like no money at this point. I don't know how I got the loan for this, but I ended up getting a 0% interest credit card from American Express. It was the Blue Business Plus, and they gave me a credit limit of $8,000 or $9,000. And I was honestly pretty annoyed because my goal was to get a bigger credit limit and then furnish multiple units at the same time. But I only had an $8,000 limit, so I could only really do one unit comfortably. And I also wanted to make sure it worked, of course. So once the tenant left, furnishing the unit, I flew there myself. It was actually kind of a fun time. And furnished that unit, got it rented pretty fast. And then shortly after that, the next tenant moved out. I furnished that one. And then, I don't know, a month or two later, the next tenant moved out, furnished that one. And now I run them all as midterm rentals. But I don't want to gloss over the fact that I had to spend probably another $15,000 in furniture. I put on a 0% interest credit card. I went to the property, I think 2 times, maybe 3. I honestly can't remember at this point, to actually furnish the units myself because I was very, like I said, very slim on cash at this point. But got them furnished, got them rented out for $1,650 per unit. So my rent, I took it from $1,950 that I was getting as long-term rentals to nearly $5,000 in rent with midterm rentals. And that was an absolute game changer because, for context, my mortgage was, or it still is, like $1,200 a month. So one unit, where before 2 units like paid for the mortgage, but nothing left over. And then the third unit was technically profit, so a couple $100 maybe. But now I'm at 1 unit as a midterm rental, covers the mortgage and then some. And then the 2 units are really the profit minus a little bit of money for utilities, repairs, all that stuff. So it's been an absolute game changer. And let me just take one step back too. So this property, like I said, it's a triplex. Now, the reason why I bought it, and talking about midterm rentals, obviously, is it is very close to the hospital. So my whole thing was, let me buy this house and this will be perfect for traveling nurses. And honestly, since I've been running it for the past 2+ years, it's been, I would say, 85% traveling nurses and 15% construction crew. Now, the construction crews is actually just like single construction workers that have their own individual, like they don't live with their multiple buddies in the unit. They just have like a unit to themselves. But that's kind of been the mix since. A couple things that I've done to actually get the units occupied. Number 1, Furnish Finder has been really, really good. I've gotten great leads off Furnish Finder, and I would say that's probably 60 to 70% of the leads I've gotten for this unit. The other 20 to 25% has been from Airbnb, just getting travel nurses off of there, and then our construction crews. And then the third is I hit some point with this property, I don't know, like a year and a half in maybe, or maybe less, where I had 1 unit that was unoccupied, and I was trying to think about creative ways to get it occupied. So I went to Vivian.com. This is one of my tricks. Go to Vivian.com and look for the traveling nurse jobs that are posted in your area. Look at the recruiting companies that are sponsoring those jobs. Call that recruiting company, let them know you have housing, and then once they find a travel nurse to take that job, they can essentially refer you. So I did get a couple leads that way, which was super cool because that was very like direct outreach, kind of put in some work to get it done, but ultimately it worked out. Another lesson that I want to share with this triplex is when I bought it, I did have my contractor, which, by the way, this was a different contractor than I used in the previous renovation that I talked about. I had my contractor go in and say, hey, this is my plan for the property, midterm rentals. I need to have a washer and dryer in each unit. Now, for the record, there was no washer and dryer hookups in the units. The basement might have had a washer and dryer hookup, but basically these tenants before just went to a laundromat. But I was like, hey, listen, my travel nurses, we cannot do that. We need to have washer and dryers in unit. And at first, the guy told me, my contractor said that we can't do that. And I said to him, like, this is like a big lesson. I said, there has to be a way to get this done. Like, washer and dryer, you need an outlet and you need water, right? Like, if we have that in this property, we can figure out a way to run pipes, electric, you name it. We can find a way to make this happen. And I think when I told him that, he was like, okay, like this guy definitely wants it. Like, let's figure out a way to make it happen. And he ended up figuring it out. He ended up putting one washer and dryer, or actually two of the washer and dryer sets are in the kitchen. And is that like perfectly ideal? Not really. But at the end of the day, these travel nurses, they just want a washer and dryer in unit. So if I was building a property, would I do that? No. But in this case, it was literally the only place that it worked in two of the units. In the third unit, there was a closet that worked perfectly for it. So we did a closet. But again, lesson that I learned here is you can pretty much make anything happen as long as you are fully committed to it. Because if I wasn't committed to it, and I said, yeah, I would like it to be done, and my contractor would have said, yeah, it would be really difficult to get it done, and then I would probably moved on and not made as much money from renting this to traveling nurses because they want washer and dryers in unit. So don't compromise on the amenities for your ideal avatar. So that sums up my third acquisition, which is my triplex. If you guys have any comments, questions, things that I didn't hit that you want me to touch on, not only for this property, but for the future properties I talk about, because spoiler alert, I have bought several more since this triplex in 2023. I bought just 5 units this year alone. So more stories coming about more properties. So if there's anything specific that I'm not covering about these properties that you're like, hey, I would love to know this, shoot me a message on Instagram, comment below. I want to make sure that these episodes are as valuable as possible for you guys. So hope you guys got value, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.